We're probably going to wait about 1 to 2 minutes just to get a few people more joined in. Until then, I'll give you guys a little bit of a look at what we're going to be talking about a little bit about today. I'm going to give a spiel first so that you guys can get to know me a little bit better and know what you're about to get into. After the spiel, please feel free to ask me any questions, and I'll try to get to your questions as soon as possible. If you, for some reason, ask me a question and I'm not able to answer it, please feel free to DM the MCATBROS account, and they can forward it to me and I can answer it, or I'm sure that they're willing to answer it as well as too. Okay, so it looks like we have quite a few people who have joined us already. Hey everyone, I'll wave to some of you. Hello, wave, wave, so fun. So my name is Abby, and you probably saw that. You probably saw my cute little headshot. What we're going to talk a little bit about today is first the test prep program that I used, which is called Altius. It's a Utah-based test prep company, but it can be used anywhere in the world. And so I know a lot of people always have questions about it. You know, what do they do? How are they different than Kaplan? Is it worth doing? So we're going to go over Altius and what it does and what the purpose of it is. We're going to go a little bit over what other materials I used, how long I studied, what it was like being a full-time student and having a job and studying for the MCAT, because I'm sure a lot of you guys are in the same position. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to track your progress while you are studying. And then we're going to talk a little bit about me, and I'm sure a lot of people who have joined are curious about my life and my acceptances and all that stuff. So why don't we just go ahead and dive in? So I took the MCAT on May 19th, and it was the first and only time that I took the MCAT. So it was something that I really was just gearing up for. A lot of my friends had taken it, and it was, you know, good time, always is. I took it, like I said, in May 19th of this year, of 2017. So I started studying, let's see, last September of 2016. And I just got my years backwards. I started studying in 2017, October, September-ish, and then I took it May 19th of 2018. So I studied for about 8 months total. And you're probably thinking, wow, that's way too much time. And I'm here to answer that, yes, that is too much time. I would say 8 months is definitely too long. I think I really burnt out. I was studying about 20 hours a week for the first 4 months and then about 25 hours a week. Give or take, you know, that's what I was trying to put in at least for the last 4 months. And so what happened was I started off at a 490. That was my first score. I was really disappointed in it, but it's okay. You know, when your diagnostic test really means very little. It's just a good place to see where you're at. And then I went up and up and up and up, and I peaked actually in March. So that's when my highest test score on an FLE was. And then I took the test in May, and I had a little bit of an extenuating circumstance, as I'm sure some of you guys will run into or have run into. And when I took it, I was actually sleeping like on a friend's couch because we had to emergency move out of our apartment. And definitely the stress got to me because the MCAT is definitely a mental test. So I ended up scoring a 504. My breakdown was a 125, 126, 127, 126. So this is in chemistry, physics, cars, biology and biochemistry, and then that's psychology and sociology. So you can see that, you know, that score is, maybe you're like, oh, that's not the best score, and it's not. I'll be honest. It's 67th percentile, so it is above average, and it is one of those scores where you almost don't know what to do with yourself because it's really not a bad score, but it's also not like the most competitive score. I'm going to say a disclaimer up front. I was fortunate that my score was balanced, meaning that each of the sections are above 125, because some schools do screen you out if you have lower than a 125 on any of the sections, which is kind of stressful for people. But I would definitely recommend, like, if you're getting like a 510 plus and you happen to just score like a 124 in cars, I would not retake it because that's not very many schools that are going to screen you out. So definitely you need to examine your score and you need to decide whether that's something that you want to apply with. So, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about my study plan and what it was like taking the MCAT, and then we can dive a little bit more into applications and acceptances and stuff like that so that you can take my word for it. So like I said, I took the sorry, I took the Altius Prep program. So Altius is known for its book, the tests that they write, having a tutor, a personal tutor, and these things called group sessions. So the Altius book is actually amazing. Like, I would highly recommend, if you haven't decided, if you're going to self-study, I would recommend not buying the Kaplan books and actually buying the Altius book. And I can kind of say this because I did use the Kaplan books at first. I used them for about 2 weeks because someone in my research lab just let me borrow them, and I absolutely hated them. Like, the books were just so much information, and maybe you didn't feel the same way, you know, it's all just personal opinion, but I just felt like it was going into too much information on things that didn't really matter and not giving you like good test taking advice. And so I liked the Altius book because it is shorter, so it's only 1 book instead of 8 books like Kaplan. And it covers all of the material that you're going to need for the MCAT. They say that you cover 95% of the material that could even be on the MCAT, so you really don't have to stress about doing external content review. And it's really, really nice because it breaks it up directly into the section. So like if you're trying to self-study, it breaks it up into a good study schedule. It starts off with Chem 1, and that's your general chemistry. And then you go into Bio 1, and then you go into Psychology 1, and so on and so forth. So it gives you a good broken up schedule already. And then as well, the Altius book is just super good for just making sure that you've covered all your content. So then the Altius people also write their own tests, and again, I would recommend buying the Altius tests. I don't know exactly how much they are because I actually bought the entire program, but I think it's around $100 for the tests, maybe more. And it's really nice because the Altius tests, I would say, are more similar to the actual MCAT that I took than anything else other than the AAMC, obviously. But they give you really, really good examples of what MCAT questions look like, and they give you explanations for everything, so it's super nice. So yeah, if you're going to self-study, I really recommend buying the book for Altius and tests. So I bought the entire program, which is kind of pricey. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's necessary. So they give you a personal tutor, which for some people that's really beneficial. For me, it wasn't really necessary because I am pretty motivated. And then they also have these things called group sessions, where if you're in Utah, where the test company is based, then the group sessions are going to be in person. So I actually went every single Wednesday and Friday to the office, and I was in a group, and it was nice because you review real exam questions. You go over the AAMC question bank, and yeah, so if you're not in Utah, then you do it online. You kind of join a virtual group session, and it's the same thing. It's actually, I found it valuable, but definitely not necessary. It was one of those things where you look at real test questions and you go through the mind of how a tutor would think. So you approach the question with, this is what I'm going to start with. Oh, I'm going to look about this in the question. And you kind of try to identify the distractors, you identify things that are going to be useful, etc., etc. It gives you a valuable way of thinking. So overall, like I said, if you're really one of those people who needs a tutor, or not necessarily because you don't understand it, because you need to be motivated or you need a more consistent schedule, Altius is actually a fabulous program for that. Like I said, if you're more interested in self-studying, I still recommend the Altius book because of how concise it is and how accurate it is to know what material you need to know. I also purchased the AAMC exams. There's 3 of them, and they're like $35 each. And I would say that if you're going to buy nothing else, that's the one thing to buy, because these are the tests that are written by the people who actually, write the exam, so it's pretty useful. Okay, so let's see. The last thing I used was the MCAT Mastery app, so this thing. And this thing is beautiful, 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 beautiful. I loved it, and I wish I found it earlier. I found it in May, and it was amazing. And so what it does is it just gives you flashcards that you can use on the go. It's $25 in the App Store, so that's kind of a bummer because I've never ever spent $25 on another app in my life, but I definitely think that if you have the money, it's worth it, because especially psychology and sociology, so if you really struggle in that section, then this app gives you flashcards that you can flip through when you're in the line at the grocery store or just doing anything. And yeah, I love that app. So I recommend it if you, overall, I guess I can just repeat what I said. So Altius, it's a good test prep program. They have this like 90 percentile guarantee type thing that if you don't get in the 90th percentile, they'll let you retake everything and reuse everything, which is nice. I obviously didn't get in the 90th percentile, but I just did not want to retake the MCAT, so I just applied. If you are more of a self-studier, then I would recommend buying the book and the tests. If you're more of a, I need a tutor, someone to guide me, I want to be in a group, the group sessions, the tutor, the book, the test, the entire Altius program is really great. You can buy it at different levels too. So you can buy like the bronze program, which includes less tutoring hours. Yeah, so someone just asked if the MCAT Mastery app is better than the Anki deck. So they're actually different. I did both. The Anki deck is really valuable because you make your own flashcards. So you're going through the book and you want to understand a certain question or you want to review it. Amazing. The Anki deck is so valuable because they use the learning curve. So every time you start to forget something, a new question pops up. The MCAT Mastery app is more for things that are obscure. So things that are not going to be in a normal content review book because they're so out there. But the MCAT loves to do some of those out there questions, especially in psychology and sociology. So I use the MCAT Mastery app in conjunction with Anki just for different purposes. The MCAT Mastery app is nice because you can do it on your phone, and it's new things. So, you know, when you wrote your own question, a lot of the times you'll remember your answer, not because you know the answer, but because you remember writing it. So it's kind of nice to have this other app just because someone else wrote it. And so obviously you don't already know the answer. I'm trying to think of anything else about Altius. I guess we can come back to it at the end if more people have questions. But I'm guessing that if you want to know more about Altius, you can definitely DM me or you can DM the MCATBROS account, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. You can also go to the Altius website. They have pretty good information there. So like I said, I'm from Utah, and people who go to my university, the University of Utah, anywhere else, everyone uses Altius. It's like super common here, and people do really well. Like, I had a friend literally score 527 this year from Altius. So it's definitely one of those things that really prepares you well. And although my 504 might not be like that impressive, I did get 14 points higher than my diagnostic, and my best FLE was FLE 3, and I got a 512. So I definitely attribute my score a little bit more to having an extenuating circumstance and being a full-time student with a job and everything, so it was really challenging, and not necessarily just to like Altius. So Altius was actually really good. I feel like I feel like they did a good job preparing me, and I was pleased with the service overall. Like I said, I probably should have just done self-study because I think I could have gotten a 504 with self-study, but it's okay. So let's talk a little bit about what it was like for me to take the exam and a breakdown and everything. So like I mentioned, when I got my dates wrong, I started studying in September of 2017. At the time, I was taking, my biochem class, advanced molecular biology, which is like the one after your basic molecular. I took physiology that semester, and I was just really stressed. It was a really hard semester for me, although I really liked it. And then I was also working part-time as a teaching assistant and as a research assistant in my lab. So put together, I really lacked time, and I'm sure you guys were like, yeah, everyone lacks time. Everyone has 24 hours in a day, but it was so hard for me to balance sticking in like an hour or two of MCAT studying. And so while I was trying to balance time for studying for my tests in school, I was trying to balance time going to the research lab, I was trying to balance time helping students because, like I said, I was a TA. And those first few months, I didn't really feel like my MCAT studying was actually very valuable. What I would do is I would go through those chapters in the Altius book, and I would just make notes. And it was just one of those things where I didn't feel like I was really retaining the information. I was just kind of writing things down, and it was kind of a bummer because I wasn't really seeing a super big improvement on my mini exams and stuff. So what I did was I switched my mindset a little bit towards the MCAT is the priority. Like, I understand it's a bummer to get a B in a class. It's not ideal. You don't want a B in a class. You want an A. I understand that. But sometimes it's worth sacrificing a little bit of those grades if you can do better on the MCAT and put more time into it. Like, I promise you can get into medical school with a B on your transcript. I promise. And then as well, I decided to take some leave from my research lab, which was really hard for me because I really like research and it's been really fun for me. But in the second semester, so in winter of 2018, this last year, I took off from the research lab. I only worked maybe 5 hours a week because I really needed to focus on the MCAT. And that's when I started seeing my scores improve a ton. So like I said, I got a 490 on the first diagnostic exam, then I got a 498, and then I got a 501. So those were my 3 in the fall semester. And then when I switched my mindset a little bit, I did 3 things differently. So the first thing I did differently was actually tracking my progress. And what I mean by that is I created an Excel sheet. Here, I'm going to show you it. So you can see I wrote my FLE exams. So these are your full-length exams. These are my group sessions. Like I mentioned, Altius does something called a group session where you can do different passages. So you have science passages and then CARS passages. Then here are the CAR drills from the AAMC. The AAMC has something called a CAR bundle. Basically what it is just a bunch of CAR questions. And you should definitely invest in it. I think it's definitely worth it. So I would track my progress on CARs, and then I would make these cute little graphs like you can see to see how well I was doing. And for some reason, for me, having that visualization of what I was doing and the progress I was seeing was super helpful. So that was the first thing I did differently to start seeing more progress. The second thing I did differently was to take some leave from my research lab. You really need to decide to prioritize the MCAT. You know, I know some people don't have a job and don't go to school while they're studying for the MCAT, and so this probably doesn't really apply to you. But if you were like me, who was a full-time student, who was working, I understand that, like, it might be tight on the budget, or you might do a little bit more poorly in your classes, but if you really want to see improvement in the MCAT, you need to make your life about the MCAT, because the MCAT is not some silly test to just dink around with. This is like a major exam where they're trying to see if you're suitable to study to become a doctor. And so I started, instead of trying to fit 1 or 2 little study hours into my day, I really started making my entire day about studying for the MCAT. So instead of, oh, okay, I really got to go to class and then this, I'd go, okay, what classes do I actually have to go to? And so I would truly not go to the classes that weren't mandatory because I needed more time to study for the MCAT. Because remember, the MCAT should become your life for a little bit. And I started planning my other studies around my MCAT, and I actually dropped a class in the winter that I was planning on taking and just decided, so that's my physics part 2. I'm actually in physics part 2 right now rather than the one I was going to take it in the semester before the MCAT, but I just didn't feel like I had the time or the energy because I needed to focus on that MCAT. So that's when I started seeing big improvements. So you can see, so here was my winter semester FLEs, 490, 498, 503, 501, and I started doing a lot better. So I got 507, 508, 512, and that's where I peaked. So I got 2 512s in a row on full-length exams, and I was really excited. I felt like I was just ready to take that exam. Like, I wanted to take it then, but obviously I couldn't. That was in March, and so let's see. But then life got kind of crazy for me because I had to take my final exams for my classes. I went to a research conference in Chicago, and that's when we had like a little bit of an emergency where we had to move out of our apartment. And so just so many things put together mentally, it didn't really work for me. And so I decided I was going to push back my MCAT, but I kind of decided that too late because it was out of the gold zone, meaning that they don't give you any of your money back. And so you go through that mental battle. Is it worth it to push it back? Is it worth it to push it back? The FLEs that I was seeing around that time were like around 505. And, I just decided that I'd put all of this time and all of this energy into this test. I did not want to give up at that point. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what everyone should do, but that's what I decided to do. And I was actually thinking about voiding my exam score. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take this exam. I'm going to see what it feels like, get the vibe of the testing center, and I'm going to void my exam and then take it at the end of the summer. I am so glad I didn't. It was kind of a weird feeling. Throughout my MCAT, I I kept getting that nagging feeling, like, just listen to your gut. My gut just told me, just score your exam. What's the worst that could happen? And I was like, okay, the worst that could happen is that I get a low score in the 500s. I hadn't been scoring in the 400s since my very first 2 exams. So I wasn't worried about getting like a super low score. I was just more worried about getting a mediocre score. But like I said, I listened to that feeling and I took the exam and I scored the exam. And they always tell you that if you feel really good about the exam, then you did really bad, and vice versa. I actually felt decent about the exam. I walked out like, man, I bet I got up to a 512 again. And I didn't. So I got my score back in June, and I saw a 504. And so that's when you really need to decide to make some changes. Like, you need not make some changes. You need to decide what you want to do. Like, you need to decide, is this what I want to apply with? Do I want to wait till next cycle? And if you're looking for advice, like, please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to the MCATBRO account too, because I think there's a yes and a no answer for all of this. Like, for me, a 504 MCAT was definitely one of those things that I was convinced I would need to retake it and apply at a different time. But again, I'm glad I didn't, because well, I guess I can share the good news now. So last week was the first week that MD schools can call you to accept you. And I got called by 2 of my top schools last week and was accepted. And so having a 504 MCAT might seem like the end of the world, but it's really not. Like, it's really one of those things where you can get into medical school. It's not a bad score. It's above average, and especially having a more balanced score is really useful. So having above a 125 on each section shows that you're at least competent in each of those sections. And again, if you have a slightly imbalanced score, I still think it's worth examining. Do you think you can get in? Is the timing right? You know, for me, because I had taken my exam in May, and I had actually already submitted my primary application. And so my decision was, do I just not submit any secondary applications, or what? Because I didn't really have time to retake the MCAT and get a much better score. And so because I was in that situation, I decided not to retake it. You know, if you just got your score back today, because I know a lot of people got their score back today, and you didn't really get where you want to go, and you want to get higher, like, you have time to retake it. That's okay, because it's too late to apply in the cycle right now. And so you definitely have time to retake it before next cycle. If you have a balanced score and you have a score that's in the low 500, I would really not suggest that you need to retake it. You can do it, I promise. Like, schools still want you. Overall, I think that the MCAT is one of those things where you need to take it. You have to do your best. But if it's discouraging to you to see people online or all of your friends getting a 520 and you didn't get a 520, I don't think that you should think of yourself as any less, you know? That is a good score. Getting in the low 500s, you beat the average. Good job, you know? If you're getting in the 400s, you'll need to retake the exam, but that's really not the end of the world. I know so many people who have retaken it and gotten way better. I mean, the beautiful stories of the hospital that I shadow, who the chief of general surgery he had to apply to med school 3 times. And so those things, I think, actually make you more, They make you show that you're resilient. You're resilient to failure. So I think we all go through failures, and I'll be honest, seeing my MCAT score was a failure. I felt like a failure. I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get into med school, and I was bummed, but I went forward. And again, I know that I probably could have done better, and Altius did a good job preparing me because I saw those 512 scores, but the MCAT is a huge mental game. So if you're thinking that the only things that you really need to do to prepare for the MCAT is to, study a book and take some tests, like, you have to realize that you need to put yourself in the best mental place possible. You want to really, make sure that you maintain the relationships with your friends still. It's nice to have a little bit of a break. Make sure that you're living in a clean house. It doesn't really do good for your mental state if everything is messy. Like, make sure that the things that matter to you and help you are still part of your schedule. Because for me, having such a disruption in my life, really, I saw a tank in my scores. And if you are studying as a full-time student and having a part-time job and stuff like that, make sure that you make the MCAT your priority. It has to be your priority if you want to do well on this test. And then we'll go back one more time. So the things that I did to see more improvement for those 512s and stuff was I used an Excel sheet to track my progress. I decided to use a more consistent study method. So what I did was I did 20-minute intervals of hardcore studying, and I would usually study either at my university's library or Starbucks, and I would put headphones in and listen to classical music, and I would do hardcore studying. I would not look at my phone, I would not look at anything, I would study hard. I would give myself a 5-minute break to either go to the bathroom, drink some water, look around, and then I would go back, and I would do 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, and then on my last one I would do a 15-minute break, and I would watch YouTube videos, and I would try to just get my state better, and you know, my mental state like back in the game, because you need breaks. So and then again, make the MCAT your life. So those are my 3 tips for how I started seeing progress. Was use an Excel sheet to track your progress. For the people who just joined, this is what my Excel sheet really looked like. You can see like my FLE exams, my CAR scores, my practice CAR scores, my AAMC CAR scores, and I made these cute graphs. Track your progress. Make the MCAT your life, even if you have a job, even if you have, you know, a significant other, even if you have all those things. The MCAT has to be your priority for a short period of time, and then use a more consistent study schedule, study method type thing. So I'm going to go through now and try to answer some questions. If you've been waiting to ask a question, now is a great time to do so. Okay, so let's see. How long did I study for? Someone asked. So I studied for 8 months, like I said. I think that's too long. I would not suggest doing that. If you want to see a good idea of what a application year should look like, you should go to my Instagram page. It's called Abby's Anatomy, and that's kind of like what you want to be aiming for. I would recommend, if you're going to be a full-time student, you're going to want to study for about 6 months. I would not study any longer. Okay, let's see. So someone asked where I bought the Altius program. So you can buy the Altius program online. Just go to the Altius website. I believe you can also buy just the book from there. If not, you could buy it from a secondhand seller. Like, for example, I'm done with my book, so like I gave it away. You know what I mean? Like, I actually gave it to a friend, but when he's done, you know, I'll send it to one of you guys if you want it. And you can buy it, I'm sure, on Amazon. Go look for it. Let's see, what did I think of the self-study package? So I actually did not do the self-study package. I did the full package. It's kind of expensive, and so if you're thinking, you know, you need to buy it, you don't. Like, you can definitely self-study. I wish I would have self-studied. I would have saved money, and I could have gotten 504 with self-study. But yeah, but I think that's what I would recommend if I were you guys. I would buy the book, the tests for Altius, and self-study. Set up a good study schedule. Okay, someone asked, what would I recommend for the CARS section of my experience with Altius? So CARS is one of those unique things. I think a lot of people struggle with this section the most. I'm trying to think of the best advice I can give for CARS, because CARS, my MCAT CARS score was a 126, and it was actually the lowest I had gotten on any test in the last 5 months. I was usually scoring around 128, but my score is a 126, so take that as my score. And I think that the CARS is honestly about going over and over and over and over. I don't think it's necessarily a skill. I think it's practice, because you need to identify. You need to think like an MCAT writer. You need to think what it's like to write these questions. You know they're trying to throw you off, especially on CARS. So you really need to read the question with tone, with author. You need to understand what this passage is talking about. Like, it's not about being a fast reader. It's definitely about understanding what the person who's writing the question wants you to think. So Altius does teach you this thing called the T method. That's what this person asked. I did not use the T method because I did it twice and I didn't like it. Basically, you like draw this little T and then you write your author and your tone and that kind of stuff. I just thought it was too much work. What I did do on the real MCAT and on every practice test that I took was I wrote down the main idea, because almost every single question that they ask you, you can answer correctly by writing down a main idea. So read the passage once. Don't read it more than once. Read it once with like real purpose, real intent. Understand what they're trying to ask you, and then write a main idea. and it should be one sentence, short and sweet, and it should really encompass the entire idea of what the passage is. And having that main idea, you can refer back to that main idea for like a quick remembering what you just read. And almost every single question can be answered by that main idea, especially, you know, like the most popular CAR questions that they ask are, what is the main idea? So that's what I recommend doing for CARs. Practice. Like seriously, you should be practicing CARs every single day. If you're interested, you can send me a DM at Abby's Anatomy. I have this amazing like CARs Word document, and I did it, and I loved it. It's so fabulous. So my friend who scored the 527, he actually got it from his tutor with Altius, and it's amazing. Basically it gives you like a 30-day boot camp. It's kind of fun. Like if you ever follow like fitness pages or anything, it's very similar. It's like on Monday this is what you do, on Tuesday this is what you do, on Wednesday this is what you do, and it really gets you in the zone of knowing what to do for CARs, and by the end of the 30 days you'll be scoring way higher. So yeah, just send me or the MCATBROS a DM and I can send you that. I thought it was super helpful. Someone asked how I studied for classes in undergrad. Well, so for undergrad, let's see. I guess it really depends on the class. You know, some classes you just try to get through and you just memorize the stuff. For the majority of classes, I use my iPad. If you follow me on Instagram, which you should, then I share all my notes, and I'm just a very visual learner. So if I draw out every single concept that the teacher has asked me to know, then I usually do pretty well on the tests. Okay, let's see. So someone asked which states my MD acceptances were from. So I actually had 4 MD. I only applied to MD schools, if that helps give you a little bit of a context. I've had 4 MD interviews, and I've had 2 MD acceptances. One of the acceptances I had was in Illinois, so Chicago, and I don't mind saying that because there's 10 schools in Chicago. The other state that my acceptance was in, there's only 1 MD school in the entire state, so it'd kind of give it away. And I'm trying not to share where I got accepted to quite yet because I really need to make a decision on where I want to go. And then I also have had 2 interviews that I haven't heard anything from, and there's still schools that I've applied to that I haven't been rejected from, and so I don't really want to give away quite yet, just in case anyone gets back to it. You know, I haven't made a decision on where I want to go, and if I get in, I did get in, yay! But if I get into schools that I haven't heard from yet, you know, I don't want that to deter anything. But like I said, one of the schools I got into was in Chicago, MD school, and then the other school was in a state that only has 1 MD school. You can probably figure out which one it is, honestly. You know where I'm from. But I'm super excited. Like, honestly, the schools that I got into were both in my top 3, and I'm super excited to be attending one of them. I'm having a really hard time deciding between the 2. If you have any advice on how to pick the school, you know, please send me a DM, because I could definitely use it. I will say, though, that the 2 schools that I got accepted to, their MCAT averages were a 511 and a 515 respectively. So I definitely did a lot lower than their average on the MCAT, but it was really cool for me to get a call in the first week saying that I'd been accepted. It really shows you that there is hope. You know, if you feel like you're the only person out there who has a low MCAT score, or who applied with a low MCAT score, or who can't get in, you're wrong. Like, there are so many people out there who feel the same way that you do. It's an average for a reason. Like, half of the people who take the MCAT get lower than a 500, and that's how it's supposed to be. They set it on a curve that way. And so don't feel alone that you're the only person that scored poorly. And if you did score kind of where I was in, like, I think applying to MD schools with lower than a 500 could be really risky unless you have something about you that's just like amazing. Like, if you've already won like the Youth Nobel Prize, like, you're gonna get in, don't worry. But if you do have a lower MCAT score, you know, in the 501, 502, 503, 504, 5, 6, you know, in that range, consider applying, because you can get in. You can get into MD schools in the United States. And when I actually decide what school I go to, I promise I'll share it with you guys, because I'm excited. Yeah, okay, so someone asked me how much the Altius program is. So it really depends. Altius has multiple layers of expensive. And it's really based on how much tutoring hours you get. So the basic program is called the Bronze program, and I believe it's $900. And it's actually probably a pretty good deal if you're looking to buy a program. It's probably a pretty good deal because it includes group sessions, it includes your book, it includes all the tests, it includes access to the AAMC question banks and the car bundles. It's really quite a good deal. Then they have the next one, which is a silver level, which includes tutoring hours. I believe that one is more, I mean, I know it's more expensive. I don't know. You know, I'm like, I should probably look these up so I'm not giving you guys like false information. Because the one I took was $2,900. So that's like extraordinarily expensive. And like I said, I kind of wish I would have saved that money, but I think I lacked faith in myself. Okay, yeah, so you can go into this Altius website. This is what it looks like. It's adorable. You can come here and purchase the tests, which the tests are amazing. Here are the programs. So, oh yeah, look at that. Save $300. That's exciting. Okay, here we go. All right, so here's the Bronze. Wow, I severely underestimated how much that is. It's expensive. And this has also gone up since I took it. So that's your Bronze, Silver, Gold, Platinum. Wow, that's gone up so much. Wait, that's because it's the wrong one. Nope, that's the right one. Yep. You know what? If you're looking for a program to buy, you'll find this is a great program. Like I said, 527 was my friend that I studied with. You can see their pie chart breakdown. Like, I'm in this little sliver of kids who scored 500 to 509, so it's not really common. Most kids are scoring a lot higher. But I really recommend self-studying and just using their materials because it's expensive. Someone asked how I came up with a successful school list. That's a great question. So on my cute little Excel sheet, like this is my MCAT Excel sheet, but I also have this tab right here. One is medical schools. Here's my volunteer hours, my shadowing hours, my extracurriculars, my letters of recommendation, my mentoring program. I love Excel, so you should make yourself an Excel sheet. So what I did was, you can see over here is I wrote the state. So it mattered to me where I live. I wanted to know, like, I wanted to live in a cool place that I enjoyed. So I didn't apply to certain states that I didn't want to live in. In order to get successful schools, you really should know how many out-of-staters they accept. Like, a lot of schools don't accept you, period, the end, even if you're amazing if you're from out of state. So don't bother applying there. So you should know how much out-of-staters they accept. And then I liked to know a general overall acceptance rate. You know, for one of the schools that I got into, the acceptance rate is really low for out-of-staters, and one of them is really, and one of them is private, so it doesn't matter at all. But I think it's good to write their overall acceptance rate just for your own information. I liked knowing whether the school was pass-fail or not. You know, I feel like undergrad can be kind of cutthroat, but I want for my medical school to make sure that I'm engaging with my classmates and not feeling competitive with them, so I want to go to a pass-fail school. Okay, and so I did write down their GPA average and their MCAT average. I would not recommend applying to a school because you're lower than their MCAT average. I'm literally 11 points lower than one of the schools that accepted me last Thursday. And that doesn't mean they don't want you. Even if you have a lower MCAT average, it's just kind of a nice thing to know, like, where you are, you know, relative. Because I did apply to schools that, I think the highest MCAT average of a school I applied to was a 517, which is crazy. But I applied to only one of those. Most of the schools that I applied to, I tried to apply to schools with an average MCAT score, like, within at least like 10 points-ish, maybe a little bit more. Because you want to set yourself up for success, and just because you have a lower MCAT score than average does not mean you won't get in, but it is one of those things that you should look at. Like, I didn't apply to Harvard because I didn't think I could get into Harvard, because they, you know, have a really high MCAT average, and so my GPA is a 3.7, and so that's pretty standard. Like, most schools are going to be like 3.8, 3.7, 3.7, 3.7. Like, that's not one of those things that was going to be a deterrent for me. I think the most important thing you need to do for finding successful schools is, one, apply to your state schools. You're more likely to get into your state schools because you're from there and they see a trend of you liking that. 2, apply to schools that you have a connection to the state. If you were born in that state, or if you did military service in that state, or if you have a spouse in that state. they're going to look on you more favorably because you have connections to their state. 3, apply to private schools, because private schools do not care where you're from, and private schools are just great. And so apply to private schools. I think that's those are like the best places to start when you're looking for schools to apply to. Yeah. Did I start junior year or senior year? So I studied for the MCAT my junior year, I guess. I'm kind of weird how I did my undergrad because I'm graduating in 2 months in December. So I guess this is considered my senior year. I'm just graduating a semester early. Let's see. How to keep a good GPA and study to get good grades in school. Yeah, it's school's fun, guys. You know what? Like, having a good GPA is important. You can't have a bad GPA. But again, like my MCAT score, you don't need to worry about having a 4.0 GPA or having an A in every single class, because that's very abnormal and it's really not a very human view of you. I think medical schools a little bit liked the fact that I was more human. You know, like, it's normal to experience failure, and it's actually really healthy to experience failure. So I have experienced like a really strong upward trend in my GPA. I'm really fortunate. I think the best way to maintain a good GPA is to find the study schedule that works for you and really stick to it. Like I said earlier, understand what type of learner you are. If you need to listen to something in order to be successful, then record yourself talking and listen. If you need to write something out, then you should be spending hours on a whiteboard, just writing over and over and over. Find a study buddy, you know, find how you can be successful. Talk to your teachers, talk to your TAs. Like, I am a TA, and I love it when kids come up to me with like a humble perspective, like, I need to do well in this class, please help me. Like, don't be afraid to ask to do well in the class. Say, I need help. How can we prepare for this exam together? And I have way more sympathy, and I want to help the students who show that they care. And I definitely like will help on the exam. I'll help to, I do office hours all the time. Like, be proactive. That's really the best way to get good grades in school. Someone asked what it's like being a part-time student working full-time. So that wasn't really me, so I don't know if I can give the best perspective on that. I think it's probably similar to being a full-time student and working and having a part-time job. I think you really need to find a balance, but the most important thing is make the MCAT a priority. You have to. I mean, I cannot reiterate this enough. You have to have the MCAT be the center of your life for a short period of time. You know, you will not be successful on the MCAT if you are putting it aside, or if you're only spending, you know, a few hours a week on it. This is not the way to do well in the MCAT. The way to do well in the MCAT is to respect it. You respect that test because it will make you cry if you do badly. So yeah, if you're working full-time, I'm guessing the best thing to do is to do the same thing, you know, make sure that you're putting the MCAT as a priority. If you have to take a smaller schedule, if you have to tell your boss that you're taking the MCAT and this has got to be your priority, so be it. Okay, so someone asked how many hours of research I do in a week. So it depends. My freshman year, I was putting in probably 30 hours a week. My sophomore year, probably about 25 to 30-ish, still quite a lot. My junior year, my first semester when I was studying for the MCAT, I was putting about 15 to 20 in. But then I realized that I needed to respect the MCAT, and I put in about 5 hours a week for the semester that I actually took the MCAT. Over the summers, I put in 40 to 45 hours a week. My research lab is kind of really important to me. I really like research, and I'm not going to pretend like, you know, you can get into med school with a low MCAT score and C's on your transcript. Like, I had a lot of research on my application. So if you're going to have a lower MCAT score, that's fine. I promise it's okay. But make sure you have other things on your application that make you stand out. You know, the first school that I interviewed at was one of the schools I got accepted to. And the first thing I did when I sat down was they told me that they loved my research. And we talked about that the entire time. So, like, it's good to have things that make you stand out and that it makes you so that they want to accept you and they go, her MCAT score is a little low, or his MCAT score is a little low, but look how amazing he is in this way, or she is in this way. Like, you need those things on your application. And if you want help, like, writing your personal statement or anything like that, like, again, feel free to reach out to me. I really feel, like, strongly about giving back to the people who helped me. People on Instagram randomly read my personal statement, gave me great feedback, so please feel free to do that, because I'm really more than happy to help. Yeah, the MCAT is such an important test. Like, respect that thing. but there is more to you. Someone wants to know what my username is. Okay, so it's Abby's Anatomy, which is adorable because it's like Grey's Anatomy. Do you get it? But my name's Abby, so I'll just like type it for you. And you can either okay, so there it is. There's my username. You can follow me. Wait, I totally spelled that wrong. That's really funny. There we go. Abby's Anatomy. So you can follow me. You can send me a DM, ask for help, ask for MCAT advice, anything like that. So someone asked if I applied in June or July. Okay, so I applied June 1st. And you're going to hear everyone's perspective, and it's all going to be different. I'm going to tell you from my perspective that you need to apply the first week that the application opens. And there's a couple reasons for this, and everyone's going to be like, oh, it's okay if you apply later in July. It probably is fine, but if you're applying with lower GPA, lower MCAT score, something like that, you want to be showing that you are proactive. You want to show them that you can get your stuff done fast, that you are willing to put in everything it takes to get there on time. And then I recommend turning your secondary applications around within definitely less than 2 weeks, but try to give a few days, because it shows them how, literally one of the schools that I got accepted to told me that they were impressed with how quickly I got everything done. And that sounds silly, but it really means a lot to some schools. And then the other reason that you should apply in June 1st, is because of the stress that it will take off of your back. So if you're applying in early June, you're going to get interviews in August/September, and you're going to get probably acceptances in October. And so it's so much nicer to feel right now that I've been accepted, and to know that I am going to be a doctor and that I'm going to go to medical school next year. That's just a nicer feeling than waiting till March or April, which still might happen, but your odds go up way higher if you apply early that you're going to get in early. So again, I think it helps you get in better. I know it does, actually, and it's nice for yourself to know that you're already accepted. So I really recommend applying in June if you can. Someone asked, what about people with low GPA? So I think low GPA and low MCAT are similar. I had a lower MCAT, but my GPA is average, because that's truly the statistical average of people who apply to medical school. So I think you can get into med school with a lower GPA. You know, I think if you're applying with less than a 3.0, you need to do a post-bac program. But I think overall, you know, you can get in with a low GPA. Someone asked to tell more about my study schedule. So if you want to watch this video later, I did talk a lot about my study schedule at the beginning. I'll reiterate a little bit what I said. I studied for 8 months. I studied the first semester as a full-time student with a part-time job. I was studying about 20 hours a week. What I would do was I went through the Altius book. I did about a chapter every 2 weeks. I did a lot of content review. I think I focused too much on content review. You have to remember that all the content that's on the MCAT is classes that you should have already taken. So you definitely need to like brush up on the content, but you really want to focus on your full-length exams. I say that I did not spend enough time reviewing my full-length exams. So I would really recommend spending content review, but focusing more on your full-length exams, focusing on your car bundle, focusing on what an actual MCAT test is, rather than just making sure you know enzymes and stuff. Like, you need to know the content, but a lot of the MCAT is really just evaluating a passage they gave you, especially biology. So biology was my best section, and that's probably just because of working in a research lab. But yeah, so if you go to my page, there's a good study schedule. If you want to follow that, I recommend it. Someone asked if I can share my Excel sheet. So I'm probably going to recommend that you make your own Excel sheet, and the reason for that is because my Excel sheet is super tailored to me. Like, for example, this is my MCAT stuff, so if you're curious about a template, I'd be willing to send you this blank, but you don't really want all my information. Schools, you really need to pick your schools that you're going to apply to, because where I live probably doesn't apply to you, and my connections to certain states, again, probably doesn't apply to you, and certain things some schools super emphasize research, and if you're not a research heavy applicant, don't apply there. So make your own list of schools. Don't really base it just on my MCAT score, because your MCAT score is, again, just one part of you. So go find schools that are connected to you. Find schools in your state. Find schools that you have a connection to, and you can prove that connection. Someone else asked if I can share my study doc. Yeah, I'm guessing that's the same thing. Seriously, I can definitely post the outline to the Excel sheet. but I think it's better if you make your own Excel sheet, because I think you're going to get a lot more out of it. So if you want, you can DM me and I'll send you the outline just to like plug in your own information. But I think it's really, I don't know, I got a lot of value out of like making my own, you know, like I had my MCAT, I put in all my volunteer hours, my shadowing hours, and it helped me keep track of me. Yeah. This is fun. How long to take car passages and bio passages? The best time management technique. That's great. So you need to stick to what the actual MCAT is going to be like. So it's been kind of a while since I took the MCAT, so I'm trying to remember, like, every single car passage, I'm pretty sure you need to, okay, so for car passages that are 5 questions, I'm pretty sure you need to limit yourself to 9 minutes. 10 questions is, 6 minutes. Oh, I'm getting that all backwards. Okay. 6 questions, 10 minutes. And if it's a 7-question car passage, then you take 11 minutes. And that's how long you actually get on the MCAT. You should do the math, though, just to double check everything. Same thing for bio. You get like 3 minutes to read a passage and like 1 minute per question, something like that. But when you're taking half-length exams, or even you're just doing like 1 or 2 car passages, you should absolutely be limiting your time. Like, do not ever practice these exams without timing yourself. It's not going to help you, because you have to be able to go fast enough. Okay, someone asked how to get involved in research. The best way to get involved in research is to go up to a professor on campus and ask if you can be involved in his research or her research lab, because, you know, the best way that you're gonna, or the only way you're gonna get into research is if you're actually asking someone with experience. If you're not in undergrad, then you could probably go to your local institute or hospital, and you just need to talk to people. You need to get over that little bit of embarrassment of, oh, no one wants to help me. Like, yes, people want to help you, especially physicians or people who are professors. They're there to help you. So if you're feeling like you don't have enough experience in research, or you're looking for a doctor to shadow, just ask. I mean, the only way you're going to get it is if you ask. So someone asked what resources I use for the MCAT. So I talked about this in the beginning of the podcast, and I've talked about it a lot. Podcast. This is not a podcast. This is an Instagram live. I used Altius. Altius is this cool test prep program. Here's their website if you want to check more out about it. It's kind of pricey, so I recommend, if you don't have that kind of money, don't stress. Like, also, this, just a disclaimer, it was like half the price that it is right now for me, so don't feel like I'm like loaded. I'm not. I really recommend buying the Altius book, buying the Altius tests, and buying the MCAT Mastery app. That one's only $25, so you should definitely buy that one. Using Anki Deck and self-studying. Like, you can definitely self-study for under $200 and do amazing. Let's see. Yeah, someone asked if I share my notes. I totally share my notes. So go to my Instagram page. Here it is again, Abby's Anatomy. I share almost all my notes on there. I usually, right now, I'm just sharing like Instagram posts. I'm working on a website to get more notes up for you guys, because the MCAT is one of those things that, if you're a visual person, it really helps to have diagrams and a really hardcore visual understanding, especially for biology and CP. If you want those, please feel free to DM me. I'm definitely willing to send them to you. There's something else I was going to say about the biology section. Oh yeah, okay, so everyone who's taking the biology section should be very into writing down what you're reading. Like, if you're reading a long biology passage and it's talking about different genes, you really need to be focusing on which gene is doing what, because it's such a waste of time to go back to the question and come back to the passage and go to the question and come back to the passage. Write down, write down, check 2, upregulated, downstream, P53, downregulated. Like, so make sure that you really have a visual outline of what you're seeing. When you're taking the MCAT, you won't use pencil and paper, they don't allow it, but they have this cute little whiteboard type booklet for you, and in case you're curious, it's a fine tip pen. I don't know why that was really important to me that I had a fine tip pen, because I really hate thick pens. No, it's a fine tip, nice booklet. It's really nice, so you'll have plenty of room to write, and you should definitely be writing during your MCAT. Write down your MCAT or your CAR's main idea. Make sure you're tracking what's happening in the biology passages, etc. So someone asked, Okay, so yeah, yes. Short answer to that is yes, I do share my notes. Well, someone asked what full lengths I use. So I used the AAMC 3 full lengths. You should buy them. They're definitely worth it. I used the 10 Altius practice tests, and I used one full next step practice test, which I know everyone has their own opinions. The next step practice test to me was just not quite as similar as the Altius and the AAMC ones, but again, to each their own. Someone asked what I did for clinical experience. So I was a medical assistant for 2 years. I loved it. Made me want to be a doctor even more. Also, I did pass out twice while I was a medical assistant, so gave me that good practice so I don't have to faint in med school now. Okay, someone asked if I recommend Altius over Kaplan Exam Crackers and Princeton Review. So I can't really say anything about Exam Crackers or Princeton Review because I never used them. I did use Kaplan for about 2 weeks, just the books, and I liked the Altius book better than the Kaplan books because the Kaplan books were super information dense. Again, I know plenty of people who have done amazing on the MCAT with the Kaplan books. Just for me, it was hard to get through so many books. It was overwhelming, and I like the Altius book. It's literally one book, and it covers everything you need to know. So, overall. What was the day like when I was studying for the MCAT? So when I was studying for the MCAT, again, I was a full-time student, so it really depended on the day of the week. My first semester that I was studying, it was fall semester, and I didn't do a great job about balancing my life. So I would usually go to classes from like 8 to 3, and then I would go to my research lab from like 3 to 4, 3 to 5, and then I would try to go to the library or Starbucks from like 5 to 8. It was really hard for me to get enough time in, though, because at that time of the day, you're just exhausted. At least I was. I was so tired. I just couldn't do it. And so I was not putting enough time in. And then Saturdays, I would go ham on the MCAT. And so what I should have done was what I did in winter semester. My school calls it winter. Maybe you guys' schools call it spring. Whatever. It's the one that's from January to April or May. And that semester, I did a way better job about organizing my time. So I put my classes in the afternoon. So I got up at 7:30 a.m. every day. I took a shower. I went to Starbucks. I studied from like 8 a.m. to like 1 p.m. I grabbed some lunch, and then I would go to classes from like 1 to 4, 1 to 5. And then like I said, I took a big hiatus from my research lab. And then I was still a TA, but I, for the most part, did my TA job. Like, I asked the professor if I could just not come to class, and he was super cool about it. So I would just grade the papers whenever I had time, usually at night. And then Saturdays, I was taking a full-length exam like every other week. And then I would, take a full-length exam one Saturday, and then the next Saturday I would review that full-length exam. And that's a good study schedule. I think that what I was doing in the winter semester was what you should be doing, every single day, prioritizing the MCAT, making sure that you're taking a step back on your other things, and just really focusing on the MCAT. Taking a practice test every week, highly recommend it. It's so valuable. Or every other week, just as often as you can, and review those tests like crazy. So someone asked if I took a medical assisting course in college. So no, I'm actually a medical assistant without the certification. If you didn't know that's a thing, it is. Yay! I did it I just walked into a medical clinic when I was actually 16 years old. And I told them, hey, can I volunteer for you guys? And then they said sure, and they actually hired me 2 weeks later as a medical assistant. So you can do that for any private clinic, because they'll teach you everything you need to know. I actually have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to answer all the questions that I can. If you have any more questions, please feel free to DM me, DM the MCATBROS, DM, us, figure out what we can do for you. So someone else asked, how involved was I in school other than TA and research assistant? Yeah, TA, research assistant. I also was the president of my pre-medicine club, which I loved. As in that position, I started like a program for females in medicine, because at my school, females are underrepresented in the STEM fields. So I did that. I did volunteer work. I like my school, but I spent most of my time up at the hospital, or at the summer camp that I volunteered at and stuff like that. I don't know. If you have more questions about my extracurriculars, feel free to DM me again. I've kind of put a lot of this stuff to the side. I forgot what I've even done. Oh, I taught a meditation class to the elderly. That was fun. No, do not study one subject at a time for the MCAT. You will forget things. It is not worth it. Make sure that you're studying consistently for all of the subjects. If you're studying just chemistry for a month and then you move on and don't study it for 4 more months, that's crazy. Like, you will not remember it, I promise. So I would not recommend doing that. Someone said I remind them of Callie Torres. That's a huge compliment because she is a babe. And you're actually not the first person to tell me that. I love it. Was there a website that I used to practice reading graphs, charts, and data? Go read PubMed. Seriously, go read research articles. Ask a professor. Read research so much. It'll help a lot. Okay, guys, it is the end of my live, but please feel free to DM me and I will answer your questions. Have a good day.